So I'm going to start by just talking about Plexus. It's not a household name. A lot of people probably aren't familiar with what we do. But as I talk about the company, you'll understand why this implementation was so complex. What we do is we're contract manufacturing in electronics. And we do the gamut all the way from conceptualizing a design all the way through manufacture and fulfillment services. So a customer may come to us with an idea for some type of electronic device. We've got design centers and design engineers who will help design that product, prototype it, go back to design, redesign, get it ready for commercialization. We'll go into manufacturing, and then we'll do some aftermarket services as well. And so our company is the whole gamut. We do not manufacture anything with our name on it, so everything we do is intellectual property belongs to our customers, not to Plexus. So we've got quite a variety of type of products that we build. And we've got all these different solutions that we implement. Different processes, tools. Here you might see Lean Sigma. We use Lean Sigma pretty heavily on the floor, the factory floor, and also now in the offices. And our supply chain, the group I'm in, really has to smoothly integrate all these functions together. So what we do, one of the things we do is microelectronics. This is done in a clean room. The tolerances are 1/100th of an inch, so it's a 1/100,000th of an inch. So it's extremely small. We do some standard printed board, some standard printed circuit board assembly. This machine here is called a pick and place machine. What it does is it takes electronic components, sets it on the raw PCB and a solder paste, and it may place up to 1,000 components on that board. And then it'll go through an oven, it'll heat the solder, it'll come out of the oven, it'll cool down, it'll be a completed PCBA. So our industry has pretty much migrated to this model now. And then we'll do the next step, which is taking those electronic components and assemble them into some type of a box build. And we may get a little more complex than that. We have some plastics and other type of products that we may have to put that into. All the way to kind of a new business for us is called mechatronics, which is for us is anything that's electromechanical and has moving parts or may have fluids, that type of thing in it. So the way we see ourselves in our marketplace is we compete on the high complexity and more of the lower volume type products. We do not make any consumer type product. You would never see a Plexus product at a Best Buy or any kind of a retail outlet. But a lot of our competitors do. Hanhai is the largest competitor we have. They make the iPhones, the iPads. These other companies make a lot of consumer products. We do not. We really operate over here where it's more complex, a lot of military, medical, those type of applications. This is just a few of our customers and how we're organized. So we've got different market sectors that we service. Medical, here's an example of one thing that we do. We build the ultrasound machine for GE Healthcare. So even though GE designs it, they own all the intellectual property. It's physically built by Plexus. Same thing with Juniper and network servers that they sell. We do some defense work as well, and industrial, which is kind of a catch-all for us, pretty much everything else. Here's another example of some of the things we make. This device here is actually a DNA analyzer. So it's got robotics, it's got devices in there to mix blood and other fluids, and it's designed to do the testing without any human intervention because of the concern with disease and so forth with having blood samples. That's a product that we actually designed for our customer. This is about as close as we would get to a consumer type product. Maybe some of you have seen this Coke Freestyle machine. We designed this. It took about 6 years to get this design right. And what this does is it's got a touch screen. You can pick up to 120 flavors. If you wanted a raspberry, lime, diet Coke, you could do that. And what's really cool about this is most fountain machines, if you've ever seen them in a restaurant or a gas station, they got the hoses and tanks and all this stuff behind the scenes, kind of a mess. There's none of that with this because The technology is like an inkjet cartridge. All the flavors are in little inkjet cartridges, so very highly concentrated. And the way it mixes is much more consistent, too, than a normal fountain drink. Just a few other examples. We do have some defense work. It's really, we have a lot of work in the aerospace industry as well. Honeywell is one of our large customers. And I mentioned the ultrasound machine. It's kind of interesting. We make GEs, and we also make Siemens, and we also make other competitors. So, and they know that, and they're aware of that. But we do make sure that we have physical separation between the factories. So the person working on the GE is not the person working on the Siemens. And then a couple other examples here. One of the things that we've gotten into recently in the industrial commercial is oil and gas. Of course, the fracking and all that, the industry is really booming, and a lot of technology going into drilling today, and we're actually building components that go in the ground, on the drill bits. And that's a whole different world for us, because solder would typically melt at 300 some degrees. Well, it ain't going to work if it's in a drill bit underground. It's going to have to be high temp solder, so that really challenges technically to make that happen. So companies like us, that's our setup, is to be able to do those kind of specialized applications. That adds a whole other level of complexity, because that's different components and different expectations from our customers. So as far as where we're located, we are headquartered in Neenah, Wisconsin. So most of us are Packer fans. We have sites in Chicago, Neenah, Boise, Idaho, San Jose, and in Juarez, Mexico. And that's about maybe 40% of our business is still made in the U.S. And actually what we're seeing is that there was a heavy migration to Asia in the last 7-8 years, but now it's kind of stopped. In fact, we may even be seeing some growth now in the Americas. And one of the reasons for that is just the complexity of what we do. It's very difficult for engineers to be working with someone 10,000 miles away. Not that they aren't capable, because they are, but just that communication lag and the travel expense. And a lot of customers, they just want to be close by. They want to be able to drive up to the factory or fly there and fly back in the same day. That's just not possible when you're overseas. But having said that, we do have quite a bit of capacity in Asia. That's about 50% of our business. We have our Asia headquarters here in Penang, Malaysia. And we also have a design center there. And we have a couple sites in China. We just opened a site in Romania. And we have design centers in Germany, Scotland, Penang, and then 3 in the US. And then these squares are the sourcing offices. So the Zycus tool has to work for all these different regions and all the different applications and all the different customers that we have. So this chart is one of my favorite, because it really shows that we are run by a bunch of engineers. Anybody that drew a graph with 3 axes like this, it's got to be an engineer. But what this shows is our revenue in the blue, and the red are the down years, and the blue are the good years. We finished last year about $2.2 billion. I think this year we're going to be just slightly over that. It's been kind of a slow growth year for us. But one of the things that happened is back in the early 2000s, during the downturn, we had a lot of customers and a lot of small customers. Our average customer was only $3 to $4 million a year. And made the decision at that time strategically to have fewer larger customers. So now we've kind of whittled down that customer list, and today we're at about $16 million average spend per customer. And we're trying to keep that customer list about 130. Now what this means for us, though, is we have 130, it's like having 130 different companies. And every one of them has different requirements of what they expect. So we had to build a tool to manage all those expectations. So these are some of the things that we wanted to get out of the tool. I think we mentioned this morning about diversity. We have a really poor way of reporting this, very manual. So Zycus is an opportunity to automate that. Compliance and risk, same thing. These are all very manual tasks for us today. We can build that right into Zycus. That would be an enormous help to us. Profit margin and cost savings, of course, is important for us. Cost savings for our customers, margin for Plexus. And I think we have some decent systems here, but they're all separate systems, so Zycus is an opportunity to consolidate and have just one system. Second tier suppliers, we have a lot of this in our industry, where we may have to send something out for special thing or other services and then bring it back, and it gets very complex and it happens a lot. A better way to track commodity pricing, again, we can track this, but it's not consolidated. So Zycus is kind of a catch-all to put all this information into one place. And raw materials market, this is kind of the same thing. Supplier rating. Again, most of these things are systems we have or measurements that we use that just not consolidated. So Zycus was a great opportunity to try to consolidate and put all the information at our buyers or our sourcing folks right at their fingertips. So like I mentioned, we have about 125 customers. All of them are unique and they all have their own applications. Each customer will give us their requirements in the bill of materials, and they'll have their part number, whatever their internal part number is. And we use that internally then to track that customer's business. But each one of these customer part numbers could have maybe 12 manufacturer part numbers associated with it. So when a customer will give us a bill of material, they may say, oh, if that's item 1, 2, 3, you can use any one of these 12 manufacturer part numbers. At the same time, we may see that same manufacturer part number on multiple customer part numbers. So there's a many-to-many relationship here. And this very quickly gets very complex to try to keep a handle on that. We've got multiple regulatory issues. So medical has their laundry list of all the stuff you have to meet depending on the class of product that it is. Defense has a whole other set of requirements. Some of the industrial products have different regulatory requirements, so we've got to manage all of that. Our cost reduction is viewed differently by different customers. We have one customer say, I want it like this, another one say, that doesn't mean anything to me, I want to know like that. And so we need the base data to be able to do that. And of course, being global, we have multiple currencies, and we do generally have one source system. We are all on one ERP system. We do have some other miscellaneous indirect systems that we also have included into Zycus. So some of the things we wanted out of the tool, global aggregation, I think that's pretty common for a lot of people, but with our business, the manufacturer part number, it can be done, but it's a little bit awkward. Zycus makes it much easier. Vendor consolidation, this is big for us. In our business, we have our own preferred suppliers, and then customers will direct us to suppliers that they want us to use. So it's always a mix, and it can be, you're going to use my suppliers on 80% of this, but then on the other 20% you're free to use whoever. So we get a lot of new suppliers that come up. Every time we have new business, we get new suppliers. So we're always looking for ways to, how can we consolidate, how can we get fewer suppliers instead of keep adding suppliers. We do run into this manufacturer part numbers with different pricing, and I have some examples of that, but sometimes that's because we're not paying attention, but usually it's because customers have specific pricing, and we can see those differences immediately. And it might be a chance for us to go to our customer and say, hey, I think you should negotiate with this manufacturer because we know others are getting it for less. AP terms, that's a big issue for us. Because of our business's low volume and high mix, we have a lot of inventory, a lot of slow-moving parts. So AP is a way to offset that. So we really negotiate hard on AP. And we want to make sure we're not giving better terms to one division of a supplier than another. And we have examples of that. So a lot of our suppliers are global as well, and multiple acquisitions, and their systems don't talk to each other, and they're not even aware of some of the other suppliers out there and what their terms are. So this gives us an opportunity to leverage that. Cost reduction reporting, I mentioned that a little bit before. It's basically it's all on spreadsheet today, and we just need something better than spreadsheets. Dashboards are a brand new concept for Plexus. We're trying to build that and develop that. Each of our customers are assigned to a customer team, and this would Zycus will give us an ability to bring that visibility down to the site level, the site team level, which is hard to do today. In the indirect, we've had no indirect visibility before, so this is the first time we've ever looked at it. And then where we have to report diversity spend, now we have a tool where that exists. So some of the calculations we've done is, of course, cost savings. We've also brought inventory into the tool, so we can look at our inventory levels right within Zycus rather than going to a separate system and trying to find that information. And because we bring inventory in and we have AP days, we can now do what we call ROCE Light. So in supply chain, we don't control AR, but we control inventory and AP. So we've got specific metrics about what this needs to be, and we can measure that right in Zycus and look for the outliers and go work on those. This will also help us lean our contracting process, which is way too manual today. I mentioned reducing our vendor base already. Net margin, just, if we make all these other things happen, we're going to improve our margins. And just giving us better metric updates. A lot of the stuff we do is updated quarterly. Well, with Zycus, we can update it weekly. In fact, we are updating weekly right now with Zycus. So here's an example. So I ran this report showing manufacturer part numbers. And if those of you that are in electronics, you'll see that these aren't really real numbers. And these are customer part numbers. And here you can see we're using the same manufacturer part number on two different customer part numbers at two different prices. So there's an opportunity here to leverage that. Now some of these could be because different customer pricing. In fact, if there's large discrepancies, it probably is because Medtronic has a different price than GE. But sometimes it's not the case. Here, in this example, this site is in China and this one is in US. So there could be regional differences based on logistics costs, freight costs, duties, that type of thing. Or maybe not. Maybe there's no good reason for that to be different. So this, again, it's an opportunity for leverage. And then, so with Zycus, we can just quickly run this type of report, and we can filter it by commodity or by manufacturer. So if we're going to have a meeting with a certain manufacturer, we can just have this report right there. Just like I mentioned this morning, we have more information than our supplier has. And we probably do have more information than our suppliers have. So here's a different view of our information. I ran a report by supplier, and I picked suppliers that we have spend in all three regions. And this, I know we have information now that our suppliers don't have, because there's no way that this supplier could tell me what the spend was in all three regions. In fact, most of these guys couldn't do that. So now we can say, if they can say, oh, you're only a $20 million customer of ours, so no, we're not. We're a $52 million. We should be getting better terms. So this was possible before, but it was all manual. Somebody would have to put it together by a spreadsheet, and then that opens it up for, well, it's not right, it's not accurate. So now we've got a tool that we know is accurate, and we can go to a supply base and negotiate with. Now here's one example of a cost savings calculation. There's a list of part numbers, what the spend was, what was the average price, what was the average price last year, so what's the savings on that average price, and how many did we buy, so what's our overall savings. So this is a great start, but very quickly you get into, well, do we really want to calculate this way, and maybe that's not telling us what we really want to know, and it can start to get really some good discussion or some fierce arguments, depending on your point of view. But the nice thing about Zycus is all this information is right there at our fingertips, and we can just pull it up and slice and dice it however we want. And then AP analysis. Here I did a report of suppliers and spend and the weighted average payment terms. So right away I got an issue here. What is going on with this supplier? Now here's another thing that we look at, especially for our working capital. Suppliers and how many items we're actually buying from that supplier. So here we have a supplier with 1 part, and 4, and 2. And it just looks so obvious, like, you showed us to management, they're like, what are you, stupid? Go get rid of that supplier. But I can guarantee every one of these is a customer-directed supplier. And it may be the only one in the world who has the design capabilities to do that part. Or our customer could say, yeah, we can move that, but it'll cost us $100,000 to move the tool. For $3,000, we're not going to do it. You can't justify it. So just some of the things that we've achieved. We actually built a separate cube for cost reduction. So we have two cubes in Zycus. We have our main cube and we have our cost reduction cube. Manufacturer part number analysis, we showed an example of that, and supplier consolidation. And the cost reduction is where we're trying to work on some of that purchase price variance and other things we talked about, and then the AP analysis. So some of the other things that benefits, of course, that I'm sure everyone sees this, that when you see errors in the data, they just stick out in Zycus. So it's immediate feedback to our whole data collection process. It really forces you to find out what happened, because if it doesn't make sense, you got to figure it out, and this brings it to light. Because we're updating weekly, we got almost real-time data. I don't know there'd be any advantage to updating more than weekly. I think weekly is probably, I don't know how many Zycus users are doing weekly. Dashboard capabilities. Once we need to develop these a little better, but love to have our KPIs just be right there, right in our face every week. This is a big issue. Meeting prep time. Now we got everything in one place. We don't have to go out and spend days and days trying to get all the data together. And we can set up standard reports, push them out, and have a more consistent global view of our spend. All right, thank you.
Thank you.